All right, joining me now, our dynamic duo, Art Laffer, former Reagan economic advisor, Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient, and author of Taxes Have Consequences, and Steve Moore, Committee to Unleash Prosperity, FreedomWorks chief economist, author of Govzilla. Arthur, do you remember that famous Reagan line? Recovery is when Carter loses his job. I'm just taking some poetic license. I'm pulling out Carter and putting in when Biden loses his job. Am I wrong?
Of course I remember it. It was a great line. We all roared and laughed at the time, and it was fun. And it's also very true. And what you're looking at here with Biden is really simply, he is Jimmy Carter .2. I mean, he's already starting after excess profits taxes on these. Soon it'll be gas price control lines. Then it'll be disallowing air to be brought into planes. You have to recirculate it. 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. I can't imagine all the things that he's going to be doing. But over the next 2 or 3 years, you'll see all of the Jimmy Carter coming back, and the consequences will be the same.
Not good. Not good at all. Steve Moore,
Not good.
Let me just get this right. Biden wouldn't lift a finger to provide additional security for the Supreme Court justices at their homes, right? Not a finger. Not a finger, okay? But he has now declared war on the oil and gas companies. I reckon the next step is 20,000 National Guard troops will go to Midland, Texas, and take over Exxon and maybe Chevron while they're at it. But really, at this moment, Biden is formally declaring war on the oil and gas industry. Okay, he wants more refineries, but he won't let them do that. He's going to tax them. I always thought Arthur taught us if you tax something, you get less of it. You tax oil and gas profits, and you're going to get less production. Tell me, isn't this a brilliant idea from Joe Biden if you're trying to fight inflation?
Well, this is one promise that Joe Biden has actually kept. I mean, he told us, remember that debate, that famous last debate that he had with President Trump, and when Trump asked him, would you try to destroy the oil and gas industry? And he said yes, because they are a polluting industry and we have to convert to green energy. And so I say it almost every week on your show. The Biden administration and the Greens want high oil and gas prices because they want to run these people out of business, and they're doing a pretty good job of it. We were at $2.49 a gallon when Trump left office. We're at $5.05 today. That's a doubling of the gas price. I also loved what you said about the Fed. I think the Fed should have done a mea culpa, and there was no mea culpa there. You and I and Arthur have been saying for months and months and months, get a hold of this inflation problem. It's not transitory. It's not peaked. It's not temporary. It's not benign. And now we've got a tough road ahead. And I know, Arthur, you've been talking about, a much bigger rate increase. I would have liked to have seen at least 100 basis points. And Larry, right now, until we get this inflation down to at least 5% and hopefully down to below 4%, you're not going to have growth in this economy.
5.
And so,
2.
You're just not.
You're not going to have growth at 5. You're not going to have growth
I'm just
at
saying,
5.
let's start with 5 and then 4, 3, 2.
That's
right?
the wussiest,
That's
wussiest thing I've ever heard you say. You're never going to have 5. It's not even close.
Me too. Yeah, true.
I mean, look. I like to make things nice and simple. Actually, it was Judy Shelton said this, and she's coming on later in the show. Brilliant, Judy Shelton. She told me on the radio this past weekend, the Fed should just raise rates 100 basis points every month until we see real downward pressure in the price indexes and the commodity indexes. That's all they need to do. Throw the models out. Arthur, I love the Fed. The Fed's inflation remains elevated. I keep looking for the part where it says we were wrong, but that's not in the minutes. And then it says it reflects supply and demand imbalances related to the pandemic, higher energy, and broader price pressures. Art, this is like I'm calling this immaculate inflation. It wasn't the Fed's fault. They had nothing to do with it. It was a gift from heaven of some kind, and it was not their fault.
Yeah, this is what happens, Larry, when you select people for characteristics other than their expertise or their competence or their real experience. This Fed is about as inexperienced a Fed as I've ever seen, and they've been thrown one of the biggest problems in all history, this huge inflation, which is accelerating, by the way. And when you look at people like Paul Volcker or like Arthur Burns or like McChesney Martin or Alan Greenspan, you've got these giants in this field that were strictly competent, and they knew what they were doing, and this Fed doesn't. So what would you expect them to do, Larry? I mean, they don't know what to do. They're just sitting there squealing and yelling and not knowing it. They're blaming everyone else except themselves. And they should know what to do and have a plan there for us, but they don't, and they won't.
The thing is, Steve, to Art's point about the lack of, Larry Summers said this a year and a half ago, that this Fed is more interested in climate change and woke social policies than price stability. All right, Summers, he said that, I don't know, the spring of 2021, call it a year ago. But so, Steve, I just want to hone in on this. Their first sentence in the press release, overall economic activity appears to have picked up after edging down in the first quarter. We just got a negative retail sales report following terrible consumer prices, producer prices, and import price reports. Yeah. And the Atlanta Fed GDP tracker has just registered a 0.0 for the second quarter. What is Jay Powell talking about? What baloney is he trying to sell us?
Yeah, look, I believe actually we're in a recession right now. I think the economy slammed into a wall about 2 weeks ago. You're seeing a big decline in employment now. You're seeing layoffs. You're seeing major firms now basically saying they have a freeze on hiring. And, you asked that question, who's right about the economy, the Commerce Department, Biden, or the Fed? You know who's right about the economy, Larry? The American people are right about the economy. 80%. 8 out of 10 Americans think the economy is headed in the wrong direction because they see it every day. And I hope you don't think I'm a wimp because I said 5% inflation. But we got 9% inflation right now. We got to keep ratcheting this down. 5% would be a vast improvement.
I didn't say it. Arthur was signaling me to say it. I wasn't. He just put me up to it. Arthur, I just want to look. There is such a thing as supply side inflation. Too much money chasing too few goods. Why doesn't anybody in Washington want to increase the supply of goods? Energy, to be sure, but really all goods. Because Biden is threatening big corporate tax hikes. He continues to do that. He said it in Philadelphia to the unions on Monday. Yellen's up on Capitol Hill last week, didn't get enough attention, promoting his FY23 budget, which is chock full of 36 tax hikes. 11 of which are on energy. But it was $3.5 trillion, Art. But they want to repeal the Trump corporate tax cut. I thought we want to boost supply. I mean, deregulate, lower taxes. If you're going to mitigate any Fed recession, nobody wants a recession. You don't want one. I don't want one. Steve doesn't want one. The Fed's going to deliver one. But why can't they help them on the supply side, on fiscal policy?
I don't know why they have a fetish against that. I mean, fiscal policy, they could do lots of things. I mean, the one you love very much, and I think is great, is making the Trump tax cuts permanent.
Yes.
That would be really good. I mean, and then we could do all sorts of stuff on energy to do that by giving out all this spending. If we impounded or sequestered all the spending that was authorized but hasn't been gone out yet, if we did that, we would encourage people to come back into the labor force. I point out all the time ad nauseum, and forgive me, but total employment today is less than it was in February of 2020 by 800,000. If you look at it relative to trend, it's down by 6 or 7 million. I mean, we are not encouraging people to come back to work, to produce, to invest, and we're not encouraging people to invest in the product lines and get the products we need desperately. And I don't think there's a chance in here that they will ever change their minds on this. They have locked themselves in to defend themselves with silly arguments. You should hear Steve Moore's comments about his testimony last a couple days ago and what those economists were saying on the other side. It's just it's crazy stuff. And, you know, they're not going to move.
Steve, how was that? The Democrats' budget committee asked you to come in and talk about how great the economy was? Was that the idea? How'd that work for you? How'd that go for you?
Yeah, it was the title of the hearing was the economic success of the Biden recovery plan. And when I tell most people about that, they burst out laughing. But these Democrats, one after another, lined up and said how wonderful the economy is doing, even though for the first half of this year, Larry, the economy is negative. There's no recovery in the economy right now. So there was a kind of delusion. It showed how out of touch with America so many people in Congress are right now. And I'll tell you one thing that really worries me on the agenda of the Democrats that they talked about yesterday in that hearing. They want price controls, Larry, which I think we tried those, didn't we, under Jimmy Carter? Price controls, and they want a windfall profit tax on energy companies. Now, Arthur, how are you going to lower energy costs if you're going to put a new tax on energy? I mean, this stuff makes absolutely zero sense.
Dick Nixon tried price controls, Arthur.
No, it doesn't. But do remember, price controls were put in by Republicans too, Steve.
I was just saying.
I was there when
Dick
Nixon put them in, and then
Dick
Ford
Nixon.
put them in.
Actually,
so it's not. Ignorance is not one party.
Is this the 50th
Well, you're so
or
much older than
60th
me, you remember
anniversary
all
of
that
Watergate? I think today or this week is the 50th or 60th anniversary of Watergate. Speaking of Dick Nixon and price controls and inflation. But let's not go there. Arthur, you're the smartest guy of all of us, okay? You're the guy. You're the Fed chairman. I'm making you Fed chairman.
Uh-oh.
What would you do right now? What would you do?
You know, if I had the Volcker ability to really get all the Fed members together and get it passed and done nicely and harmoniously, which Volcker really was able to do, I would have the federal funds discount rate up to, I'd have it probably at 10% right now. And I'd be watching these inflation numbers and seeing if we can't start bringing that inflation down first, and then I want to bring prices down to where we have a much better system. Paul Volcker had the effective discount rate in January 20th, 1981 at 19%. The prime interest rate was 21.5%. Yeah, inflation was running 14, 15, 16% at the time. He was able to do that and bring all of them together. That's not what's happening here. I mean, frankly, I'm very concerned that it won't happen, and this inflation is on an acceleration course. We have 4 months left before this election, and longer than that before the new Congress takes over. But I am very afraid that inflation will be much higher, employment will start dropping during this period, and that Steve might even be right. I never would have guessed it in 100 years, but we might literally be in a recession right now. And
So,
we
can I
need
make
to
one
get
final point? I know we're
prepared
running
for how
out
to
of
handle
time.
this.
Another thing about the Fed, the Fed throughout most of our lifetime, you look at people like Volcker, Greenspan, even Bernanke, they were fiscal conservatives. They urged Congress not to run up these massive debts and deficits. And this Fed is just filled, in my opinion, with all these Keynesians who believe in this fiscal stimulus nonsense, which doesn't stimulate anything but government.
The Fed is, Stephen, the Fed is woke, progressive, and modern monetary theory.
That's exactly
right. It is
right.
infused by all these horrible
incompetent.
currents. And, well, yeah, I guess I have to spell it out. I'll go back to the New York Post editorial this morning. Baloney.
Yes.
Baloney. Thank you, Art Laffer. Terrific stuff. Steve Moore, thank you, buddy.